What's up, guys? Uno here, and today I want to talk about Ashes of Creation. For those who don't know, Ashes of Creation is an upcoming MMORPG with the goal of kind of breathing life back into the genre of MMOs. We all know MMOs have been pretty stale for a while now, and there's a lot of us that have been waiting on Ashes for quite some time. As of yesterday, the verbal NDA was officially lifted. So now those of us who have participated in the developmental testing phases of Ashes of Creation can share our feedback and our opinions of the game in its current state with everybody. Only the verbal component of the NDA has been lifted. So what does that mean, right? Well, this applies to basically anything that you can communicate via spoken word like I am now or written via text. All the footage and screenshots and things of actual gameplay are still heavily guarded. But I am, however, allowed to, play the official released footage in the background while I recollect my experiences and state my opinions, on the current state of the game. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I am not a Kickstarter backer. Like many others, I was able to get into the alpha testing via the Adventurers Pack. So the majority of my experience comes from the recent playtest weekend. I did play the entire weekend though, every single live hour of the game. From the moment they said the servers were up to the moment they said get off, I was online. And I consider myself pretty well versed in the history of Ashes and the goals of Intrepid and things like that. So first I'm going to give a general overview of the testing, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail about the way it played out, and maybe we'll end with like some hopes and dreams I have for the game. These are all opinions. This is my perspective on the game that I played this weekend. I know there's a lot of opinions floating around out there. I'm just giving my take. Overall, I think that Steven and the team at Intrepid have done a great job at hampering people's expectations. They give a lot of fair warnings about delays and bugs and things that may not be working as of yet in this alpha. But honestly, I feel like the alpha playtest that I played in this weekend was way further along than I had anticipated. It's true that it is a bit bare, especially in regards to the mechanics that haven't been fleshed out yet, like crafting, for example. But just going off of Steven's warnings, and the expectations of a developmental alpha, there's actually a lot to Ashes that can impress, even in its current state. I played with a fairly large group. We went in with the general mood of, if we're all able to log in today and explore around the starter zone, we would have considered that a success. But there was way, way more to do than just that. To get the cons out of the way, though, there were a couple issues that happened throughout the test. The primary of these being the rubber banding issue. So they said it was something related to a polling that they were doing with the server. And it seemed like after a couple hours of being live on each server, eventually it would build up and cause a lot of rubber banding in the starter zone, the starter village. There were two ways around it, it seemed. So once you left the starter village, because it's on a main island, right? So there's a main island, and then there's kind of like the main land that's to the side of it, kind of like a Japan to China type of situation. And you could cross over the water either by, there was like a teleporter boatman, so you talk to the ferryman and he sends you across, or you could swim across, or there was like a water mount that you could eventually buy to get you across. And once you crossed the water onto the other side, no rubber banding at all. It was gone forever for everyone. So it was luckily enough that my group had chosen to develop a node on the other side of the water. So once we got there, the rubber banding just was not an issue for us at all. I saw a lot of people talking about it and that it was really hard on them, but it seemed like it was easily identified, and you could easily work your way around it. Towards the end of the weekend, Intrepid started, they figured that they could cycle the servers every 3 or 4 hours. So that's what they were doing on the last day, and that seemed to improve it as well. People were able to quest and stuff in the starter area, so that was nice. The second issue involved buoyancy. So they recently in their last live stream video described how they've redone buoyancy and they're working on ship mechanics and water mechanics and things like that. Well, the buoyancy is there, but not all objects have been assigned to it. So there are a lot of times where you might be swimming through the water and you will glitch on the buoyancy because it's not affecting your character. Next thing you know, you're flying through the sky. You can just straight hold spacebar and fly away now. It doesn't seem like, that's a bug, of course, but that's something that is just because it's in a stage of development where they haven't assigned those buoyancy values. That's something that is easily fixed. It's not anywhere near the type of problem that the rubber banding would be, which they seem to maintain towards the end. So it's definitely something that they're able to control. Those two cons, though, were nothing compared to the amount of fun I had in this weekend test, let me tell you. Especially on the second 2 days when we got to play for the full day. Even the combat, honestly, which some of the alpha testers before me have complained about, I felt it to be super fluid and fun and extremely customizable. I'm not sure how someone can complain about the current combat system when you almost can play it however you like. If you're into tab combat games like, WoW Classic, Star Wars Old Republic, Arc Age, things like that, you can play it just that way. If you're more into action combat like maybe Elder Scrolls Online or Guild Wars 2, it was just as good as those, if not better. And it was quite active as well. I honestly hope they don't take any turns away from the path that they're going, because right now it seems like there are options for everybody. I know some people have commented that they were hoping for more of a closer to a BDO type combat, but I feel like what they have now, is substantially better. It worked well for me. So to get more into the details of the weekend test and how it played out, it was a 3-day test, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the days were scheduled to be testing from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. PST. The first day ended up getting delayed about 5 hours, so it didn't actually go live until I think right around 4 p.m. PST, and we got to play until about 9 p.m., so that was about 5 hours. And then the second day, it did come live directly on time. It came on at 11 a.m. In fact, I think it was about 15 minutes early that my guild buddies and I were able to log in. And they closed it down a little bit early. I think the rubber banding had scaled up at that point, and they hadn't quite figured out how to control it yet. So I think servers went down at around 6 or 6:30 p.m. that day. And so that's about 2.5 or 3 hours early. And then on the third day, we had the full testing period. So it was 11 a.m. And then servers actually were on a couple minutes extra towards the end. Let's see, the character creator, there were 3 classes available in Alpha 1. The character creator was pretty bare bones. So 3 classes was Cleric, Tank, and Mage. And then there were 4 races. The 2 human races were available, 1 elf and 1 dwarf race. There were no orcs available yet. Once you went out into the starting village and you got to look at the aesthetics and like the graphic fidelity, some of the light rays and things, everything was beautiful. And I was like getting between 60 to 90 frames the entire test. I don't think I dropped below 60 at all. The only issue like that was the rubber banding. It didn't cause any frame drops, but it just sent my character to a different location kind of. Even while we were doing, so we teamed up at one point with another guild and we did the green dragon boss that it showed in the most previous boss video that they had showed off. This was a little bit smaller version. It seemed like the one that they showed in the video was huge, but it was all the same mechanics. They were a little bit broken, to be honest. Some of the mechanics were bugging out, but we were able to finish it as I think it was like 37 of us or so. And we finished that, so that was nice. And even while we were doing that, I was still getting like 60, 80, 90 frames the entire time. It was very nice. The guilds were available, but they were a little bit buggy. So if you joined a guild and you logged out, when you logged back in, your guild was unassigned. Like it didn't say you had a guild. Your guild tag was gone from above your head. But if the guild leader looked in, they could see that you were still a member of the guild. So for a while we were kicking people and inviting them back, back and forth to get the thing back on their head. But eventually we realized that after about 10 or 20 minutes, the guild tag would just come back on its own. And it even happened to like the guild manager, the guild lead. So when I logged off that night, I didn't have permissions in the guild the next day. So that was interesting. All the nodes were there. There were 9 nodes, and they were each available to get to level 3. And then on the second and third days, they gave us increased node experience. So we were able to, the starting node where everybody was leveling, because you come in and you're going to start hitting quests and grinding mobs at the very beginning. The starting node, which was leveled up by the starting village, got all the way up to 3. And then the node that my guild decided to work on, which was to the far east, called Nala node, we were able to get that to level 2 as well, which was really cool. And the transitions between the phases of the nodes, it was amazing. Like, it was just empty, flat space. And then next thing you know, the ground gets leveled, a wall is built, and there's a little campsite there. And then next thing you know, it levels again, and the walls are a little bit taller this time, and now there's a lot of campsites, and everybody's kind of around each other, and it's almost like a small little tribe. And then it levels up again. Now it has full-scale walls, brick buildings, caravan masters, guild masters. It's really cool. And many of the cosmetics were available too. Most of them were mounts like the firefox or the swimming turtle. There were a lot of horses. There was the plague doctor costume. That one was really, really nice. And they were better versions of what they've showed us in some of the developmental updates, because, like, for example, the firefox actually had the fire, like the fire elements, coming out of his ears, coming out of his tail, and like on his face, and it made it look way more fox-like, and it was really, really cool. And another thing that I really liked was there was Hitbox Collision in the entire world. So you and your friends would be running into each other. Like, for example, when we did that green dragon boss, there was a part where you had to dodge out of these circles, his AoE circles. If you've seen the video, he kind of shoots them up into the sky and pops them down onto you. And those are one shots. If you get hit by that, it is an insta-death for every single player. So you have to kind of do your dodges out of them. And if you try to dodge in the direction that someone else is dodging, you will literally crash into each other and bounce back. So you could get stuck, like in your dodge, if you're dodging it correctly, because of Hitbox Collision. And it felt surprisingly good. I've never played in a game with Hitbox Collision before, but I really, really enjoyed it. There was, like I said, active dodge rolls. So you hit control and you would do a rolling dodge in whichever direction you were looking, and then it did do an iframe, so you could parry attacks with it. For those who don't know iframes, that's an invulnerability frame when you roll. So at one point during your dodge, you are completely invulnerable. And there was also active sprinting, so you could hold down shift and sprint there. The stamina mechanic was a little bit confusing. It didn't show you a stamina bar, but you definitely ran out of stamina. And there were no shields at all. So tanks were kind of just the melee DPS of the test, because there was no shield. There were, however, mentions of testing active blocking in the future. So hopefully that's something that happens. Caravans were also available. We were able to dispatch one. It took one of my guild buddies a lot of grinding, it seemed like, to finally get up everything you needed, because it had a gold purchase price. You had to have a certain amount of materials to move, and then you paid for it and dispatched it from the tier 3 node. The unsuspecting part was whoever pays for the caravan has to physically get on the horse and drive it to wherever they're headed. Which was super interesting. We had no idea that was going to happen. And then if you wanted to fight or defend the caravan, you had to run up to it and click it, which I think in the past they've mentioned would be like an AoE area, which is a lot better, because actually when guys were coming up to the caravan, we were able to just kind of get in front of them as they were doing their base attacks and force them to purple on us. Corruption was also fully active. Like I said, you could force people to purple on you. It was a little bit wishy-washy here and there on don't attack innocent players type of thing, but in the end, it's all there, it seemed like. A couple of our squad guys went a little bit too red, if I do say so myself. We're maybe getting a little too antsy with the kills to the point where Steven literally had to join my guild's Discord chat in the Ashes of Creation Discord and have a little conversation about the goals of testing and things. But it was fun. It was a fun chat. Um, any class was able to use any weapon, but the only ranged weapons were like magical ones. There was no bows yet. They were like wands and staves. And then the first dungeon had a jump puzzle that was very cool. But since it was in the starter zone, there was a lot of rubber banding in there. You almost couldn't do it. If you were able to get in there and do it before the rubber banding built up, then you were good. Or if you were playing a mage, you could just blink through it and you were pretty good there too. Um, so for the world bosses, we did all three of the available world bosses in the normal testing. There was the small one whose name I can't remember, and then there's the two ancient ones, the twins that they showed off in one of the dev streams, and then there is the green dragon boss in the forest that they showed off in another stream. The first two, the ancients and the little guy whose name I can't remember, they were basically tank and spanks. We had about 35 or so people, and we kind of just like, it was because they show off on the stream, there's a mechanic where it kind of flings you around and stuff. As long as you stay close to him, that doesn't do anything to you. So we kind of just all piled right on top of him and tanked and spanked, and that was about it. The green dragon though was pretty tough. The mechanics were a bit bugged, but we were able to get it down eventually. We collabed with another guild and we were able to get it down after, it was about 2 hours, maybe like 5 or 6 wipes. The real tough part was that there was a bug so that the puddles of acid that he drops either wouldn't reset, or after they were gone, they would just never go away. So it looked like there was more than there actually was. And then crafting was hardly fleshed out. There was basically no crafting yet, but you could gather materials and a couple other things like that. And then leveling felt very, very nice. You got a good amount of levels, a good amount of experience from doing quests, and you got just as good amount of experience from doing mobs. I don't like games, like for example, Arcade is a good one to point towards, where it forces you, you got to do all your green quests if you want to level up. And this one, you could have went straight to this, like a farm spot, and then just take out mobs and, 600 XP per and level yourself up. It's not too hard. And then the quests and the XP was all group based. So if you did a quest and everyone in your group had the quest, which was an 8-man group max, you could unlock the quest missions for your teammates in a certain proximity. And the proximity was pretty far. So for example, there was one mission where it was, the guy was like, collect flowers for me. I need a species of every flower in the area, bring them back to me and put them in my pots or whatever. And you had to go around and look for his flowers. But if you were doing it as a team, your teammates could go to each individual flower, click the flower, and it would more or less pop for everybody, with the exception of maybe like the far, far away ones. And then mob experience was split amongst the group. It kind of got really heavy around like 5 or 6 members in a group. But if you played with 3 or 4 members in a group, the experience was reasonable. And it seems like the more I talk about it, the more I realize how amazing of an experience this playtest was. Like my entire play group, which was, from my guild, there was minimum 25 of us at any given time, more usually around in the 30s, all for the entire weekend. And we were wildly excited the entire time. We had a blast. There was a delay and there was like a couple bugs and stuff, but once you got to run around the actual base foundations, the core of the game was all there. And the parts that mattered, like, they felt great. Every part that I was like, I hope this works this way, it did. Every single time it did. And it seems like my hopes for Ashes have always been good. I've always really high hopes for this game, and I want it to work out, and I hope that the promises that they've made, are fleshed out in the end. But in a world of money-hungry game studios, it's kind of hard to realistically approach games that you want to be good. But it seems like after this playtest, honestly, my expectations from Ashes went from like being cautiously optimistic to being like excitedly hopeful. Well, thanks to everybody for tuning in. If you have any other questions about the alpha or about ashes in general, maybe that I didn't go over, feel free to leave a comment and I'll answer whatever you might want to know. Now that the verbal NDA is over, we can just talk about it freely. So I plan to cover ashes heavily in the future. So as soon as we have another test or more content to go on, I will be back here again talking about it. So I hope you guys have a great day and I hope to see you in the future.